Well, good evening. I don't have a presentation. I'm mostly here to answer any questions that you may have. I want to preface that with a couple of things. Number one, if you have questions or concerns about a specific incident that may have happened, I probably don't have the information, but I can definitely get that for you. If you have some concerns about general stuff, that's okay. I would like to first start off by addressing the comments that were made earlier in regards to the crime wave that's going on in here. Prior to this meeting, the sheriff had asked that a report be compiled of calls for service from the beginning of the year to date. And according to that report, I just wanted to bring to attention, or he wanted me to bring to attention a couple of things. As of the time of the report, which was probably yesterday, there were 3,311 calls for service in the Salida area. Alarm calls, residential, commercial, burglary alarms accounted for the number 2 slot of those calls for service. And in regards to property crimes, now originally it said it was less than 2% of the total calls for service. I think it's probably closer to 4% of the total calls for service. And when you look at that as an overall picture, that's pretty darn good. So what I have, what was compiled, was a list of all the calls that we've handled in Salida from the first of the year to this date, broken down by the way those calls were classified. And those were the 3 points that you wanted me to bring up here tonight. So other than that, I'm open to any questions. Yes?
Wait,
Sure.
real quick, sorry.
Sure.
So
Okay.
we always have to do council
That's
first,
okay.
just to let you guys know.
Your protocol.
So, anybody on the council have any questions?
Okay, looking at the time since our last meeting, which was October 28th, we've had 142 disturbing the peace, and 53 burglaries, and 15 larceny, petty thefts, so 78. So that's almost 50% of our calls for those petty theft and burglary. And vehicle break-in and vehicle theft is another 11, and 10 assaults, and then 5 fraud, which is the probably identity theft stuff that's going on. But only 3 for drugs, so we're doing good on drugs. But the other ones are like off the hook for Salida. Typical Salida is more like 13 burglaries maybe, or something much lower. So we're like, I would say, triple the normal amount of those things going on.
Now, is this just for a 1 month period?
It's actually 2 months.
Okay.
Right?
And I would be happy to sit down and compare that with you. Like I said, I'm not familiar with those statistics, so I can't speak to them at this point. Like I said, all I can do is tell you what we've got from year to date.
But I do see in the data what you're saying about a lot of burglar alarm calls, which are probably false alarms.
The majority of them are.
And then I see a lot for burglary too. So when it says 459R, that's actually somebody's been burglarized calling you guys.
It's classified as a residential burglary, yes.
Right. And then the 459C is commercial.
Yes.
What if it's just 459?
That, to be honest with you, I can't tell you. That's where the call came in as a burglary, and it wasn't determined whether it was a commercial or residential, and when it was closed out, it was not reclassified as one or the other.
And how would I see that different in statistics from burglary alarm? It would just say silent alarm.
Yes, burglary alarm is a code A, C, or R, I believe is how we classify it.
So we got problems
Yes.
with that. We always have.
Yes,
Waste
burglar
of
alarms
time.
they do require a lot of response times.
And are you guys still following up with making them get a permit when they have an alarm? Because we've had like a bunch of people put in alarms who probably didn't get their permit yet.
That I don't know. I can't speak to that. I know that we did have that program several years ago, but again, I can't speak to that right now.
And how's the response for that? Are you guys able to respond to all those silent alarms and, you know?
We will respond. They're prioritized usually as a priority 2 or 3 out of our list of 3. We will respond. We are not an agency that does a no response. We will always respond.
Is there anything we can do?
To lessen the alarms?
Well, or just to tell you guys that it's a false alarm faster.
We have a policy or a protocol that requires that we will not respond, if I can say, is that right? Can I do that? Not respond unless there's a key holder on scene with an appropriate code. So a neighbor calling in for a neighbor, although that's a great concept, that will not negate our response. We will still respond to do the check of the residents until we have a verified key holder or resident on scene to tell us that it's not needed for
And then
response.
if it's a false alarm that you've had to go out on, what happens then?
We close the call out and go back to the next call.
Yeah. Do they get knocked down another priority level next time?
No, they do not. They're still classified as a priority 2 or 3.
Any other council questions? No? Was it Dwayne, were you first? did you?
Yeah, just curious on, if I'm understanding it right, you're saying you won't respond unless there's a key holder on site?
No. See, the double negative always gets me into trouble. We will respond. The only time we will not respond is if there is a key holder
Okay.
on site who has already checked the residents out and told us we do not need to respond.
Okay,
or the
that's
resident
because
is
I
up
was
with an
curious,
appropriate-
what's good as a burglar alarm? If you're gone and your burglar alarm's, well, there's nobody
we
there,
will-
so
we
we're
will-
not gonna
we will still
respond.
to the best of our ability, we'll respond.
Okay.
Did you have a?
Yeah, I lived in a different county, a couple of different counties before. And I know that at least after the second false alarm, there was a fee that was charged for your false alarms. Have you ever considered that, or is it even legal anymore, or what?
We have considered it. We have implemented the program. To be honest with you, I don't know where that stands right now, whether or not we're still instituting that program. Again, it's a huge clerical resource. And again, I don't know whether or not we're still doing that. But yes, we have implemented that program. We weren't as stringent as some agencies were with that. We did require some registration and a deposit. But never have, in my history, have I known us to put somebody on a no response list for failure to pay the fee.
Well, or fine them, have them pay for it.
And again, that's how you judge that. Like I said,
Right.
we've had the program in place before for registrations, but like I said, we will still respond. We're one of the few agencies that will still respond.
Mark?
Do the deputies that are assigned to this particular area, based on your statistics, do they tend to congregate or hang around the areas that are higher crime areas and not really patrol the outlying areas as much?
So if I understand your question, the deputies that are assigned to this particular beat, do they spend more time in the high-profile areas as opposed to the other areas? You know, I think it's I can't tell you for certain. I know that with the deputies that do work for me, when we do have deputies up here, I make it a point of letting them know that I expect high visibility stops in the areas so that you folks know that we are here. I think it's important for you to know that we are here. But I don't relegate them to specific areas within the community. I mean, the whole community deserves to be served, and we will do what we need to do. And if there's traffic stops or subject stops that need to be made, we're going to go ahead and make them regardless of where they're at.
A follow-up question, how big is the area for the deputy that actually covers Salida, Wood Colony area? What is their geographical boundary?
Big.
So it's all in county, right?
No,
Unincorporated, or-
it's not the county. We have, the way our beat system works is we are typically running 7 deputies for the entire county, which is a little over 1,500 square miles. One deputy will handle Salida and West Modesto, kind of that whole West Modesto, Salida, and everything to the west of all the unincorporated areas of the county. When we have extra staff, which is about 50–60% of the time, we will delegate a deputy to the Salida area, basically cutting our West Modesto beat in half. So that area would take most of Salida all the way to the west and south to maybe Carpenter Road, or not Carpenter, but Bluego is where it used to be.
So we got more firemen on duty than police protection.
Okay, could be. I don't know what the fire department staffs, but yeah. Typically, we're running 7 to 8 deputies per shift in the county at night.
Joe, you had a question?
Question.
Oh, okay. Sean?
Okay, we talk a lot about reports made and calls just sent out on it. What were your arrest statistics on follow-up to these reports assigned to detectives? What are your arrest statistics on all?
I don't have arrest statistics on any of these. That's a pretty broad and general.
Out of all the reports you take, how many actually result in investigations?
Well, it all
and
depends on
actually
the
have
type of
arrests?
report that we're taking. Not every report that we take will result in an arrest. I mean,
Percentage-wise, do you have any?
I don't have that number for you. I'm sorry.
2%.
Eddie?
Again, I could guess, but I would be unfair.
Eddie?
Sorry for the specific question, so I'll ask one that's a little bit more broader. Do you guys have any type of protocol set in place for strategically going after drug houses and drug dealers in Salida?
The only strategic approach we have is that when we start to see a pattern of activity in a certain particular area, we will dedicate our officers to that. Again, my philosophy is keeping officers in a specific beat over a long period of time. I'm not in favor of moving officers from one beat to another unless it's absolutely necessary. So the officers that work for me are in a beat for at least a 6-month period while they're assigned under my command, which means that the officers that work up here, they get to know the activity amongst themselves. They get to know the residents here, they get to know the players, as we call them, those people that come into contact with frequently. And the deputies are pretty good. They're pretty good about doing their own self-initiated activity and hitting the places that need to be hit. But again, if we start to see a pattern of activity, we'll go ahead and bring that to the deputy's attention. Because again, what happens on one shift or one squad may not be translated to the other. So my counterpart, another lieutenant watch commander, we will frequently get together and talk about some of the hot spots, as we call them, to make sure that my deputies are working the same types of areas that his officers are working as well.
So hypothetically, let's just say that there's a house that it has its hotspot, and let's just say people have lived in that neighborhood for 2 years, and this is still a hotspot, and you guys are out there on a weekly basis. At what point do you guys get together and say, hey, we should build a case, we should build something so we can actually prosecute these individuals for their actions to get them out for a lot longer than 48 hours?
It happens more frequently than you would think. It's just sometimes harder to build a case, but we do that frequently.
What do you need to build a case?
Time and information are the two things that we usually have to have. Is a lot of good and solid information.
So if
And more deputies.
If we find out about drug houses, we should turn them to you, let you know?
That's the first place to start.
Okay.
Yeah. We have a number, 525-7188, for non-emergency situations if you want to get a hold of one of the watch commanders. Myself and Lieutenant Garrett, who handles the other side of the house for me. We'll take that information and we'll do the best we possibly can with it.
So
Eddie,
I'm almost done, I'm sorry. I don't
That's
want to
good.
put you on the spot, but what happens to the point where we as citizens of Salida feel that the job's not being done? What steps do we have to go higher to get things done?
Well, the first thing I would suggest is have you talk with us.
So
Personally.
So one of the things that I wanted to do was do a ride-along.
Mhm.
Really curious to see on how that works. So about 4 months ago, I went to the station on Crow's Landing, filled out a report, gave them my contact information, and never heard anything back. And last time I checked, a clean background.
Right.
There's no reason why I never got contacted back. And for me as a citizen, it's just really frustrating where I'm really trying to be intentional about understanding what you guys do and how you guys serve our community.
Mhm.
And I just want to know. I feel like I don't know.
Did you get my name?
No.
Would you like it?
I would. I'd like a business card if you have one.
I have one, and what I want you to do is, and I'll address that question. If you filled out an application, I will look for it. Okay, if it didn't get answered, I'll take the responsibility for that, but I'll tell you why it didn't get answered more than likely, is because within the last 3 to 4 months, we have hired probably about 15 or 16 new officers that are currently going through the field training program. Now, those officers are spread out throughout the entire department, but what that means is that our cars are now doubled up. Our officers are now riding with partners. So getting citizen ride-alongs is pretty tough because we'd have to put you in the back seat behind the cage, which wouldn't be nearly as pleasant for you.
As long as I'm not in
So,
handcuffs, then I'm okay.
again, I think that I apologize for not getting back to you, but because of the new officers and because of a couple of college programs that have taken place in the last 3 months, we have had absolutely virtually no single officers available to put citizens with. I'm hoping that will ease up in a couple of ways. Number one, Stanislaus State will be done with their classes, and we will not have to participate in that particular program. They will be done, and hopefully we'll be cutting loose some of these trainees to become solo beat deputies, thereby freeing up our officers, and we would love to have you come out. What I want you to do is to call me personally, okay? I will look for your application, and if you'll give us until maybe after the first of the year, February at the latest, until we can start to kind of clean things up and get some officers back on the street, we should be able to start calling people back for ride-alongs.
Great, thank you.
How's that?
Thank you.
Okay.
I've heard some people in Salida, because, you know, we really want more increased coverage here, talk about doing, like, volunteering for stars and stuff. Would that help as far as in our own neighborhoods too, you know?
You know, I'm all in favor of stars. I don't know where the Neighborhood Watch program stands at this particular point. I'm a huge proponent of that. If you're interested in Neighborhood Watch programs, I have a team of stars under my direction that will come out and help get things started for you, kind of explain the process of what a Neighborhood Watch program is, and how the neighborhoods themselves can start communicating amongst each other, and then through us, through the STARS
Well,
program.
we are heavily promoting Neighborhood Watch here, and several of the neighborhoods in my neighborhood too, streets in my neighborhood have started them. But I mean, to be a STARS officer specifically,
To be one, we would take anybody over the age of 18, but again, the STARS are not a eyes and ears on the street kind of a program. So I don't want you to think that that's a supplemental to what we do. Our STARS provide a number of different services throughout the agency, one of which is crime prevention, where we come out and we're kind of a resource and assistance to communities. So if you want to be a STAR, there's an application process that you would have to go through. All of those forms are on our website, and from there we will put you through a background.
I'll tell you though, having a car in the neighborhood, when we had a neighborhood watch meeting, it did apply pressure on one of the drug houses, because the guy that lived in the drug house kind of freaked out about it, so.
Again, I'm all for high visibility patrols, and like I said, when we've got the extra resources, I will send them up here, and I'll ask them to make as many traffic stops as they possibly can.
Good, thank you. Okay, Mark?
How has Proposition 47 impacted the county? Because Brad was talking about how crime seems to have gone up in the last couple of months, and coincidentally, we're kicking people out on the street.
We are very frustrated with Proposition 47.
Well, that's the best way. January, though.
No, it kicked in the day after it was implemented.
Yeah.
We're very frustrated. We can no longer arrest certain individuals for crimes that we could have before, getting them off the streets. The threshold for property crimes increased. The variance in narcotics crimes changed. So we're very frustrated, and I think it does have some impact on the community. The data is still too new to specifically state what impact that is, but it is very frustrating for us.
I'll make a comment on that. I don't want to take up a lot of time, but it seems like if you're with Proposition 47, you almost have to look the other direction on some smaller, lower classification crimes. But sometimes those initial contacts that you would have on a lower classification crime would get somebody that has either skipped bail or done something that, or has some other kind of a warrant out for their arrest that would, at a higher level, that would get them off the street and kind of make things a little safer for us.
Without sounding flippant, that's probably a mistake in thought. We do not look the other way. Crimes are committed regardless of the level of crime. And what you're talking about, that petty theft or that minor narcotics charge now still gives us rights to contact an individual. What I can say is that what you think is happening is not happening. We are taking people to jail for those warrants, because that seems to be the only thing we can arrest them for. So the person who's smoking dope or shooting up or doing something like that we count, or carrying methamphetamine, even though we may not be able to arrest them and book them on that charge, that person most likely does have a warrant that we can book them on. So we are getting them off the streets for that. We're just not being able to do much with the new charges. So I think I want to make sure you understand that we do not look the other way, and it gives us reasons to contact and interact with the public.
Maybe you could explain to us the threshold of what you need to arrest somebody, so we know how to call in stuff we see to make it at that level.
Well, threshold, I mean, it's all over the map. The arrest itself, I mean, that's a technicality term. What we're talking about is our inability to actually take somebody off the streets and book them. We're issuing citations left and right, which is technically an arrest as well.
And then that becomes a failure to appear.
That becomes a failure to appear on the court side.
And then you can pick them up for that.
Yes, we can. So it's delaying the process. That's the frustrating part that we're beginning to see.
So what's the threshold for what you can actually cut them up for?
Well, for property crimes, generally it's $950 or more. Narcotics, you know, I haven't done my research on that, but most of the stuff that we used to be able to arrest for, we cannot arrest for, we won't. We'll still issue the citations. But those things go hand in hand. We find that narcotics and property crimes are synonymous in a lot of reasons. So that's again, a frustrating part.
So would that include a vehicle that's less than $1,000?
Vehicles, so far, it's still grand theft auto, that's still a felony.
Okay. Dwayne?
I know about a month or so ago here, you had an incident just off this new housing district over here. You had a bunch of new trainees on staff that day. You know, looked like you had half the force over here, which I thought was fantastic. But my question is, of those, I think it was 18 or so new.
I was like 12 or 13 because I was there that day.
Okay, well, I'd heard the number 18.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Number
But
gets bigger
anyway,
every time it gets old.
I'm just curious as to how they're working out. How many of them are actually getting qualified, or how many of you dropped out of that, or, you know?
We lose very few in our training program. The ones that were out there that particular day are just about getting ready to be cut loose, because I think that was probably 2 months ago.
Yeah,
if I'm not
roughly.
mistaken.
Yeah.
And we've got about a 3-month program, so they're coming up to their final phases now.
Does it look like they're all gonna make it?
I'm
I
pretty
mean,
pleased with them. Yeah, they're a lot younger than I am, but I'm still pleased with them.
great.
Any other questions?
Is there any training that you can do in Salida to help us have more visibility?
Was that in Salida you're talking about?
It's training as far
Right,
as
close to your house.
Trainees in our community.
It was by my house they just trained, so that's in Salida.
There was an actual incident.
No,
but-
this was an incident that we rolled in.
Yeah.
That is, I'll share that story real quick. We had responded to a domestic dispute over off of
Endicott?
Durley?
Yeah, somewhere up in that area. Call that we normally would have sent maybe 3 cars to, based upon our resources. But every one of those cars had 2 officers in it, plus because of the fact that it was the trainee's first day on the job. So they were all getting their first orientation on the streets. And so, yeah, I rolled up there after the fact, and I was pretty amazed and answered a lot of questions as to what was going on. Because normally we don't have more than 10 or 15 officers on a scene. So, but I was pretty happy that those officers were out there, because again, all of those officers are close to being cut loose.
Okay. Yes.
What are your qualifications for like cutting someone? Like, why would you cut someone? For what reasons?
All over the map. I mean, I could spend another half hour, 45 minutes just on that. You know, report writing is our biggest issue. Is people being able to tell the story, what they're being told in the story, how to put it down on paper, and then how to translate that into a written report. It's very difficult for some of our trainings.
Deputy Balance, that was here last month, he actually talked a lot about that during his presentation, so the video might be online at Salida California News if you want to look it up. Any other questions?
I have no question, but I'm ready for public comment.
Okay, Sean, go for it.
As I alluded to earlier at the start of the meeting, we had a media representative out here. It'll be on Channel 13 News tonight. I don't know if it's 10 or if it's 11 o'clock. But my concern that was addressed to him was a recent report done most of the Modesto Bee and that Channel 13 had covered under predictive policing. And this potential impact on, is this really stopping crime in the general area, or is it just moving it outside of the boundaries of Modesto? Is it, moving it out of their backyard or in their high crime areas? Myself, as a victim since July of this year, of 3 burglaries, one at my house, one of a car break-in, and one at secured self-storage within the Salida area, and a loss of probably over $30,000 worth of merchandise and damage. From what the deputy's saying, yeah, maybe since the beginning of the year, but as Brad was alluding to in these crime statistics, we've seen a big crime wave since mid to late summer here. It has picked up significantly. Are the criminals stupid? No, they're not that stupid. Do the deputies come out and take reports? Yes. How many actually get arrested? How many actually get held accountable? Very few if any. They do a lot of time taking reports. The last report I had, which involved a grand theft auto, was placed early November, right, November the 4th, I believe. As of last Wednesday, right before Thanksgiving, when talking to John McQuarrie down at the Sheriff's Department, they had yet to put my report in the system. People were calling in, and there was a subsequent report that was done with some video evidence, although, and I'll speak a little more about this secured self-storage, their high-tech video surveillance equipment is poor at best, could not even get a license number. But people were calling in descriptions of the vehicles, the suspect vehicles, in 2 of the robberies early November, with license numbers associated with these vehicles. It was going uncorrelated with the other thefts because the report had not been put in the system. It was still sitting on a sergeant's desk waiting to be input in the system, let alone correlating it with the other reports that were coming in with more identifying data with these vehicles in this, that met the descriptions of the suspects. If we're not holding these criminals accountable, they're coming up here and they are victimizing us again. All that's happening is reports are getting written. More and more and more reports. We become a statistic. Instead of the crime going on in Modesto, it's moved to where they know they have little or no coverage. It's taking a long time for the deputies to get out here and take a report, let alone to respond to activity in action. One deputy communicated to me in one of the reports I made that the DA isn't even prosecuting video evidence, so why bother? Unless you have a witness that's willing to come into court and actually testify, who wants to do that, they're not even going to bother. They're not even going to bother prosecuting it. So even if they get arrested, they're going to walk. I think this says a lot for our current state of our community. These criminals are not as stupid as we may want to think they are. Say, well, yeah, stupid criminals are going to get caught. No, they're not getting caught.